Thank you again for joining me on another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. Today I have, I always have somebody who's special to me, right? Uh, who I'll be speaking with. He is somebody who shared my intimate, original peer group. So part of the Peter Sage, alum, right? To become an alum, you were part of a smaller fragment of that whole body. And he was part of my family, being introduced to this idea of not just self-development, not just like, hey, thinking happy thoughts, yay, and again, like this idea of Ralph Wickham, I'm doing stuff, or I'm helping. Uh, it's it's a way of truly contributing, right? What's deep in your soul and what the soul's purpose is, and trying to reach out and find itself. And right, because the soul being an unlimited force, being confined into this limited vessel, well, then we find ourselves blessed with interactions with people around us to really help us find our space in the world and find our voice and find who we are. And there's certainly a demarcation in my life that is before I met Peter Sage and after I met Peter Sage. And, on that journey of first discovering Peter Sage, well, O is right there with me. And so he holds a special place in my heart. And yeah, this has been fascinating overall, just living the life and seeing where it can take me, and now to have conversations with those who are important to me, right? This is a lot of fun. And I suspect, just like with all the conversations, you're in for a good one, and we'll just see where it goes. Awesome. Thank you for joining me. All right, Otis, Bess. So happy to have you here, man. Somebody, near and dear to me, part of my intimate, peer group, and himself a trainer, in this mystical, magical, language and training, and gracing us from just stepping off of a community call, which, boy,
Yeah.
if you haven't experienced one of those, you're missing out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what's going on, and tell me a little bit about maybe some of the wisdom you gleaned as a community manager, especially after the call you just got off.
So, yeah, first of all, glad to be here, Josh.
Thanks, man.
Uh, it was the, it was going over the first module, ruling reality. So leaving that and then coming here to talk about ruling reality is kind of like it set me up for this. Um, when we went through EMF together, it was from looking with fresh eyes at this material that just
Mm-hmm.
kind of happened in front of us. We had no idea what we were in for. And now that I'm getting ready, that I'm going over it in a different capacity as a community manager, it's really interesting to watch, the eyes. And I keep wishing that, gosh, if I could be there, starting all over again, because I know how exciting it was for us. But just watching how different people try, some actually have done very well wrapping their head around the metaphysical world, which is interesting because we had quite a few left brainers. And in this group, I'm noticing that we have quite a few right brainers.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, as in one person was talking about that they kind of have lived in the metaphysical for so long, but they want to come out of it and
Mm.
actually manifest stuff. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, I had never heard that before, but sure.
You know what I love about what you said too is that you found this, almost like this deep sense of longing, of wanting to go through it again as a beginner, and not, and having it fresh. You haven't gotten there. Don't you think that's a bit of the soul whispering to us again that the idea is not the destination, the idea is the journey?
Well, yes, I agree with that. I've always looked at the EMF journey was the beginning. it was tools and a roadmap. And I remember people when we were going through that were kind of freaking out. It's like, well, what if I don't finish all this? Like, this is not a test. It's not where you're gonna flunk and get set back a grade. These are
Right.
tools and a roadmap. I mean, this is something that you use for the rest of your life. And what's interesting is I've gone over this module by myself a couple of times, and the power of the pack is something different. It's like I've gone over it and understood stuff a lot more than the first time we went over it. But now seeing it through other people's eyes
Mm.
again, through a fresh set of eyes, it just um deepens, my experience with this module, and it's funny, I'm just at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, there's this idea too that right, true mastery, right? Your true learning happens when you're teaching others, right?
Yes.
And so often we assemble all these pieces, and this is one of the things that Peter cautions as well, is this idea of I just need to learn more. I just need a little bit more, understanding, a little bit more knowledge. But unapplied knowledge, right? How many people have books on their shelves that they've never read, right? Unapplied knowledge is, I mean, who cares, right? What good does it serve for us? But when we have that application of knowledge and we see where it can take us, and then more than that, um, as we're sharing in that gift, right? We're sharing in that journey with others. Well, then we're informed from you have the benefit of having almost like a higher dimension looking down, right? A bit of a father figure of a sort. One, because right, your age, two, your awesome beard. But also the fact that you've been down that road
Mhm.
and that you are willing to put yourself out there, because most people are not, and to just be an authentic expression of who you are
Mhm.
and allow others to do the same thing, right? I mean, there's something deeply magical about that, and allowing that to mix, and then informing us in that new space. And even though you are at a different dimension looking down, I suspect you're also elevated even to a new space with that mixing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's it's funny because, and I know I'm not the only one that words of wisdom have come out of my mouth that were actually directed towards me.
Yeah.
Whoa. How, I didn't know that until it just came out of my mouth, and I know there's been many times that I've said, I'm saying that to you, but it's something that I need to hear as well. And I'm finding, I find that as working and teaching, um, I've run into that on numerous occasions. Things where, because I guess because you're looking for a way to express it so someone else understands what you're thinking, or what you're trying to express. And sometimes it comes out in a way that I was like, whoa, that was pretty cool. I think I'm going to write that down. And in fact, that happened to me yesterday in a,
I'm gonna write down what I just said so I don't
yeah,
forget.
it was in a chat. And basically somebody was talking about uh they worried about bothering people. It's like, I don't want to be pushy, and what I discovered is a lot of times, people are so busy, it's not that you're being pushy, it's the fact that they're caught up in their own lives. And like, if we look at it as our analogy of the movie, they're the star of the movie, we're just extras. So if you want to get into a scene, you're going to have to put yourself in the scene,
Yep.
as opposed to sitting back and waiting for the director to give you a call back, which they never will, you
Right.
know.
Because they're so
So
busy, right? Absolutely.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the director's so busy directing the main character, and just the as an extra, the only time you're in that person's conscious is when you're in front of them, or when you see them, or when you interact with them any other time. It was like the person that served coffee to you yesterday. Before I just mentioned that, when were you last thinking of them?
Right. Right. Pretty much never. Right.
Yeah, except when they were serving you coffee.
Yeah. No, I like that. Right. And we have to have a way to be rendered into their script somehow.
Yeah.
And, and if we worry about being pushy, we might actually find ourselves in a place where we don't reach out. That said, do you find that there is still benefit to perhaps looking at, okay, well, am I being pushy or am I just reaching out? Right. That way we can allow ourselves to be open to the feedback because others might see it as pushy. And even though who cares, right? Because I'm the star of my own movie. At the end of the day, I don't swim in goop. When we're networking with others, can you find or maybe even articulate that fine line of kind of that being pushy to present itself versus being put or and allowing yourself to be open to feedback rather than closing ourselves off? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's still something that challenges me, because as don't want to be that pushy person. And I don't think anyone wants, having worked car commercials and around car salesmen, and actually sitting in the lunchroom and seeing the 10 commandments of car sales on the on the wall. And I think it was probably commandment number 8, which was pitch them till they buy or die. And you don't want to be that person. I mean, I don't want to be that person. But there's also a point where if you're trying to be of service and you sincerely want to help someone, not necessarily sell them something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I Peter put it best. I think, it's like, uh the kids don't want to eat peas, but they need to eat peas. So as the parent, it's like, look, eat the peas. You eat the peas, and yeah, you can have some ice cream later, but you have to eat the peas first. So being being persistent to help someone gives me the ability to actually be a little more pushy. Having said that, I also don't like to beg.
Mm.
So, like if I have a really good friend of mine. We go back to high school, and if anyone in this world could use EMF, it's him. But uh, he knows everything.
Ah, one of them. I've been one of them.
Yeah, and it's hard to teach somebody something when they know everything.
Well, it's not hard, it's impossible, right? It's a cup that's
Well,
filled to its brim. And so as soon as
well,
you pour in water, it just overflows. And then like there's nothing left. And then they're left at that full. Well, no, I already know that, bro. What do I need that for?
and that was a challenge for me, because I mean, it's like somebody that you care about. It's like, but if you just, you could do, and you get to the point where you just want them to do it because you know that they could benefit from what you have to offer. But then it gets to a point where you're pulling your own teeth with your feet, and it doesn't work. And it comes back to, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. At which point you just got to say, hey, I don't care. I've got, it's like, that's that's the movie and the script that they've chosen for their life. There's nothing that I can do about that.
And that's one of the brilliance, ideas about, Peter talks about this idea of being the example in the invitation, right? Because what you have to offer is not a bunch of, wisdom that's basically been held behind closed doors of secret societies. You have an invitation,
Yeah,
right?
and I think
And
that I think that's the part that was kind of hard. It's a hard thing to just be the invitation,
it's very hard.
to wrap your head around that concept. And it's like, yes, no, I the only way that I can help him see the light is to be a gracious invitation.
Yep.
This is what it could be for you, and just present that in front of him, and not, definitely not rub it in his face that he's still in the same place that he was 20 years ago and really hasn't gone anywhere, no matter how much he thinks that he has. And I just, I can't do that. And again,
Sometimes being sometimes shocking the system though, right? So
well,
imagine maybe that you know are having a barbecue with him or something, and you just get in a conversation. He's like, "Well, I already know that." You're like, and that's funny. You seem to know a lot. How's that get? How far is that getting you? You know, and just maybe a comment that might embarrass him a little bit, and it might make him lose face, and then just kind of sit back and just see how he takes it. And they're like, "Look, dude, I love you. Of course, I love you. All right, you're my brother, but how well are these ideas serving you?"
yeah, nah.
No. Oh, one of them. Okay.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been there, tried that. No,
Okay.
I mean, sometimes, that's where you're supposed to, I mean, he's living the life that he's supposed to live.
Yeah.
So again, what right, as I hear Peter coming through me, what right do I have to rewrite his script? You know,
I um I I look at the conversation as a living organism, and life wants to live. And I see that if I were having a conversation with a friend of mine that I, love dearly, that is expressing, this idea, I can't help myself but to allow to really help life and to augment it in whatever way I could. And so the curiosity of my nature. And I think that's, this idea, written in the Tao of being supple and flexible, right? Well,
mhm.
that's really curious, right? The embodiment of that is curiosity, and being curious and allowing to see where that life goes rather than just cut off. I know that, finite, dead, nowhere. And so I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't. I know with my own personality, it would just come out of my mouth whether I wanted, whether I thought about it or not, because I'm very curious about the way people think.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I've said this to him many times
Yeah.
over the years, where there were times where I was trying to get him to do something, and he said, "Yeah, no, no, no," and then later he ended up doing something similar, and he loved it. And then I was trying to explain to him, okay, so now that you're doing this, the something that you might want to look out for, because you can get sucked into buy me really, really easy doing this. And I mean, he knew that too. And then he got sucked in and kind of burned out, and
Yeah.
then quit. But I think it has a lot to do with being the messenger in your own kingdom. Or for instance, when we were coaching our kids in hockey, if I want my kid to do something, I go tell the other coach.
Oh, perfect. Yep. Because your
Tell
kid's
tell
just
my
going to
kid.
drown you out. Oh, that's just dad. I don't have to listen to dad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we figured that out really, really early, and it's like we were. Hey, could you go and tell my kid to,
Dude, that's
keep?
brilliant. Yeah, you can't be it's so hard to be a prophet in your own land, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking to say. Write that down. But yeah, it's funny because I was in a conversation with someone else who was and I know this personally, that people don't want to bring up their new ventures to family and friends, partly because you know of embarrassment. What if they think I'm crazy for doing it? And the other part is the fact that they're going to say no, most likely. And I remember something I did a long time ago, and that was a concern. They brought it up, and it's like, okay, so the thing is, when you talk to your family and friends, they're not, they're going to say no. they aren't going to want to work with you because they know you. They know where you were, and they kind of want to keep you there because they like you the way you were or are, and they don't want that to change. On the other hand, going in knowing that they're going to say no, then you get a chance to express yourself and not really worry about it because
Yep.
they're going to say no. So
They
what
say
are
no
you worried
anyway.
about?
And then it gives you the ability to flex that muscle of like, okay, well, if I already know what the conclusion is here, uh, then let's just go ahead and give it a free for all and
Yeah,
give my best authentic version, and then look to see where there's chinks in the armor.
right.
Because the chinks in the armor we see in them are chinks in the armor we see in ourselves, right? And so we're going to have a reflection of the mirror that tells us like, oh, this is where you've changed, right? Because you're going to see them kind of stop and be like, well, wait,
Mm,
this is different energy, right? You're
yeah,
you're bringing different energy to me, so now I can either hold it the way that it is or dismiss it and try to hold it as you were. And if you show up as your I am, well, you're going to overflow beyond the way that they want to hold it, and you're going to see that pretty self-evidently, and that in itself can be a great and wonderful gift.
yeah. No, I agree, and yes, they do reflect the mirror of kind of where you were. If
Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to move forward, and I see that. Um, Another story of someone who basically was so is so tied to the past that they keep setting up situations that they repeat that
Mm,
same pain over and over again, and they can't
yep.
see it. It's like the person that refinances their house and pays off all their bills only to make larger bills.
And find themselves way back in debt again.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
almost immediately, and and I think it goes back to the financial thermometer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I have money. That means I can go out and get all this stuff because I'll 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 just I'll justify how I'm going to pay this back. It's no problem this time because last time I didn't have a plan. This time I have a plan, and then the plan is to refinance again to pay off.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Get a some reverse mortgage or something, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
There's wow. There's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
So
Well, and so this idea that if I just go and get more material stuff, now I've got it. And now all right, look at me. I'm Joshua that's now got it. I've achieved it because I have this bright shiny thing. Problem with that is that maybe it takes a day, maybe it takes a week, maybe it takes a month, but you'll realize that you're the same person
mhm.
with that thing, and now it's off to that next thing. And you heard me share these stories. I don't know how much of this do you remember, but I had this tattoo on the back right calf of Batman and the Joker, and it's this idea that I was, I was formulating in real time. Right, I knew this was going to be done in a series of sessions, so I was formulating. I knew I wanted it. I was formulating exactly what it meant. Right, just like a great artist, just kind of putting intention in it, and then I write a story about it. During through an idea of it before, through it, and then after, just kind of the capstone. And Sadhguru, who following him really led me to Peter Sage, who I feel they both basically say the same thing, just in different ways.
Mhm.
Um, he helped me articulate this idea of beware the pursuit of happiness. And it sounds so cliche. And just like I went to a Chinese restaurant and opened up a fortune cookie and said, beware the pursuit of happiness. Okay, yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, appreciate that wisdom. But when you think of it that way, of like, I just, I want this new car. I want this, new bright, shiny object, but I'm not willing to become a different person to materialize that into the world. I just want to buy it. Well, once that desire is found, well, you no longer desire it. And what, or you might even find yourself in a place like I've seen these nature documentaries of like a cheetah that doesn't know what to do if the prey doesn't run away. And there's these times where the prey is so stricken with fear, it just doesn't move, and the cheetah is like super confused, like, well, that's weird. What do I do here, right? And so sometimes you can be the dog that catches the car, and then you're
Mm.
like, well, I didn't expect that. Um, and so if we expect from the offset, the idea that the goal is to become the person that will materialize that into the world. Well, then if we catch the car, we're like, oh, sweet, I guess I'm that person then, right? Rather than just putting off who we are, putting off the shadows of the past that are trying to creep up, and usually, harder and harder and harder and stronger and stronger and stronger. Do we have to push force to keep them down? Spend more money, like you said, refinance just to pay off our bills, just to find ourselves even worse off because we aren't coming to grips of this idea that we're chasing happiness rather than just becoming happiness. And right when happiness is suspended over that next hill of accomplishment, well, then we'll never be happy. Because once we get there, well, again, we're still the same person because we put the onus on achieving that thing or owning that thing that'll make us happy, but nothing else but ourselves can make us happy. And with the Batman and the Joker's face is all blue and looks very toxic, but he's got a big old smile on his face. And so in this world, um, madness will often masquerade as happiness, and stern and stoic resignation and misery is really about the only way to be a good person.
Yeah, I agree. It's like what was it, the soul of money? Talking about this woman, her and her husband, had had good jobs, and to live in the neighborhood that they lived in and the jobs that they had, there were certain things that they had to have. I mean, like, you can't drive a Toyota Tercel if you're a doctor. You can't live uh, you can't live in the slums, if you will, if you're a doctor. You your kids need to go to the best schools. All these things that they were doing, and as she was saying, she things that she was doing to provide for her kids took took away the time she had to spend with her kids. And if you ask the kids what they want, it's like they want the time.
Yeah.
It's it's funny because my father worked at night, so he was able to hang out during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like he would take me to games. He was the parent that attended games, things like that. A couple years ago, went to a memorial for a friend, and one of the guys I grew up with hadn't seen since I was a kid, and just said, "Man, your dad was so cool. He actually showed up at the games, and like he was there, and and the thing about it, I didn't really think of it that much because I mean, it's
He was there.
because it was there for me. And you get this feeling that because you have the way you experience life is the same way other people do, and then you start. I didn't, as a kid, I didn't really notice that other. I mean, there were other parents there, but I didn't notice that everyone didn't have their parent there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm too busy playing the game, having fun. But then also, I've noticed this in coaching as well, where we had one guy, basically his executive secretary came with this kid down to Los Angeles for a tournament. And I thought it was like I thought it was his mother for the longest. And then it was like, no, that's the secretary. And I was wondering why she wasn't really paying attention to the game, doing stuff. So it's one of those things that time spent with your children outweighs stuff that you buy them.
Well, and not to put too much of a controversial spin on this, but it takes somebody who's very controversial like Donald Trump. Is it fair to say that he's somebody who really, really seeks approval?
Yeah.
It oozes in his every word, talks about ratings all the time. And you can see that this is somebody who likely was chaperoned by the secretary and not by mom or dad. And no matter, what's so interesting about what you brought up too is that, so I have one of those, or my mom, she showed up to all my games, and I didn't realize how hard that was, right? Thinking back, now as an adult. And it's only been recently that I've been able to look at her as a person, right? Get rid of all the baggage and what mom is supposed to mean. You're supposed to be perfect, and you're supposed to have all these, rules put together because I depend on you, right? And that's the only reason, right? Because I depend on you. Therefore, because I'm so special, you should have it put together. And how freaking dare you? How dare you not have it together? And that's a lot of burden and responsibility for a person, right? But it's ultimately, we become the gods of our offspring. And since our offspring are also their own gods, well, then we can become disillusioned to the great gifts that are actually there. And like you said, just being present, having your dad present, sharing energy, right? Here's people that just so many years later, and that was rad that your dad was there. And
Yeah.
so we realize that in everyday conversation, just showing up, right? We can influence so much more than just our own story. We can influence and help inspire others, even years or decades later.
Yeah. I mean, and you never know what it's going to be that really sticks under somebody's fingernail. I always like to look at it like, if I pour sand, pour out a bucket of sand in your hand, most of it's going to fall to the ground. When you open your fingers, more is going to fall out, and when you shake your hand, even more. But then there's going to be those grains that stick under your fingernail, and you never really know at the time what those could be. I'm reminded of a time I was homeschooling my oldest son, and I took him. I was interviewing this guy. He has the only grocery store in Hunters Point, and when we went in, we're standing there, and there was this guy delivering beer, and he didn't look very happy. And I pointed out to my son, I
Hmm.
said, does he look like he's enjoying his job? He's like, no. And I said, the traffic that we ride in on, like every Tuesday to go down to science class. It's like, yeah. I said, that guy gets in that traffic 5, maybe 6 days a week to come do what he's doing. And it's like, I don't care what you do, but education gives you options. And for me, it was just a passing, it was just, I want you, this is why education is important. That was the only thing I was trying to express to my son. For his high school dissertation, he brought that moment up.
Oh, what Papa Bear proud moment. Yeah.
Yeah. But when he said it, it was like, wow, that really influenced him. I didn't, at the time, I didn't, like I said, it was just
Well,
like a
notice that you didn't tell him how to think. You invited him. You were the
yeah,
invitation. And
yeah, yeah.
that's
Uh,
it's funny that the invitation is actually the sand that found itself within the fingernail.
yeah,
Because coming back to sand, we hold so much more of it when we relax our hand. But the more that we try to tighten it, the more squeeze it out and the more we lose. And we have almost nothing there. And so when we're in the moment in flow and just relaxed, those are most likely going to be the most memorable and meaningful moments. And this, goes back to the Tao Te Ching that, why do these, this, I'm paraphrasing here, but
That's right.
the master, the master, influences the world and lets it go. And that's why it lasts forever,
Yeah.
because they don't need to control. Because when you need to control, well, then all that sand slips out between your hands.
Yeah. You don't leave space for growth.
Yeah.
You're
Well, and then you're immediately going to cause resistance, right? Because, well, who are you to tell me? But you
yeah.
invited him, and he had to answer too, right?
So we'll we'll roll. Let's go forward maybe like 5 years after that. So he had moved out. He was going to San Diego State. He comes home uh one time, and I don't remember I don't remember what the conversation was, but I was like, you know, you might want to consider something. And he was like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm an adult. I said, whoa, back them up. It's like, you're a grown ass man. You're gonna do what you want. It's like, my parenting days are over. If I'm not gonna get the call in the middle of the night, to come get you. So it's like, all this is on you. I'm just suggesting something that you might want to consider. It's like, it's no longer. In fact, I think, and it's funny because a lot of people don't get what I say when I say that when my kids turned 18, my parenting days were over, which means I can say yes more times than no.
Ah, nice, nice. You
You
can
know,
free them to the world and allow them to actually stretch their wings.
yeah, I can. It allows me to be their friend, because when I was their father, it's like, look, there's like 3-4 billion people on this planet that can be your friend. My job is your father. So sometimes I have to make the tough decisions that you don't like.
Mm.
And that's fine. I mean, that's what I signed up for. But the moment they turned 18, it's like, oh, that's I've molded as much as I can. Now it's up to them to spring forth from here. At this point, I can still be the wise old sage, but I can't I can't send them to their room
Mm.
for timeout. I could stop paying their phone, but
That would certainly have a sharp impact.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
another story. Oh, but
And I love that, man. I like the idea of I not really sure where where I personally fit into the idea of identifying as a friend, because I'm certainly, out of the two parents, right, Matthew, my son, his mom, and me, I'm certainly the one that if somebody were to say, hey, do you have a friend, parent, I'd certainly be that. And not that, and I certainly send him to his room. I have to have conversations with him, but I find that the more the more my spiritual path goes, the more I find that it's just easier to invite him. And not because it's just like I realize that, the hard way is to force him, but in the sense that, like, in everyday interactions, I just find it just happens so naturally just to invite him. And it's not perfect, right? I'm still a dad, so I'm still going to have old software
mhm.
that in the moment will run, and I'm like, oh wow, look at that, that's some outdated software, I wonder if I should run an update program. And where I might be a little too restrictive for his needs. And he just wants to allow a an idea to flourish and see where it goes. And kind of coming back to what you were saying about people not wanting to share ideas with their, with their loved ones. Often we have this, fledgling of a plant, right? This seedling that you look at it funny and it drops and, drops dead. And they're like, and, people run around, look at family. Everyone's going to judge me for every little thing. Look at this beautiful little thing I have. And then as soon as I get judged, it wilts and dies,
Yeah.
rather than allow to be that tree that when people try to push that branch out of the way, right, and be like, it's not for me, well, it just springs right back into place, right, and vibrant, and is not smashed. And so I found that it's a lot easier for me to hold his space and hold his energy. And I don't even necessarily need to like actively be thinking it in the moment. Maybe it's because it's easier because he's effectively a mini me in many ways, right? More ways than not, which is probably really scary, but also plenty of ways in which I'm unfamiliar with, that I just can't see, unforeseen, in which he's his own person too. And it helps me be the bowl, right? To carry his energy, the bowl to carry his water, and that just can allow it to take shape however it does.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and uh, what you said about giving them space to be themselves. I remember Will, my oldest, he started out as a computer science major, and then switched to be a physics major.
Mm.
And so I had a physics major that was working at Starbucks. So I always used to say, yeah, my physics major who works at Starbucks. And then he stayed there for a long time, then started going to other coffee shops. So my physics major, who's a barista, and it didn't make any sense to me. And it's like, why is all of this expense going into physics, and you're slinging coffee? I didn't say anything, but it was just one of those things that just, it didn't add up to me. Then I ended up had an office that was next door to a roaster, and the science that goes into roasting coffee, all of a sudden it made sense.
Mm.
Made all the sense in the world. And he's I believe he's already learned roasting. I mean, when I say he's into, I mean he's deeply into coffee, latte art. Uh, yeah, I mean, like he was well known in San Diego, and then he ended up being well known in the Bay Area before he moved back. So he's still he's he's somewhat sought after. I like to look at it, and again, I think about the reason I didn't say anything to him. It was, even though to myself, I'm like, really, physics, coffee.
Sure.
It's like physics major flipping burgers. I mean, in my mind, I had the same analogy. Kind of. But then the one thing, and I told both of the boys this. It's like, I really don't care about your grades. I'm more interested in you learning how to learn,
Mm.
because that's what is important when you get older, the ability to learn. Because grades, in my opinion, if a teacher is able to reach you and really reach you, they'll give you an A. If they aren't able to reach you, whatever degree that they're not able to reach you is the grade that they're going to give you.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean that necessarily that a D student is stupid. It's that maybe you weren't able to inspire them. you know, and I don't want to blame it on the teacher, because I mean there's different modes.
No, I like that. I like that because the impetus is on your kid to learn how to learn, right?
Yeah,
So the impetus is on him to be there. But certainly you're right. The inspirational model of the teacher itself can really pick and pluck the low-hanging fruit, which become the A students. And then
yeah,
they're the ones that get most of the sunshine, right?
yeah. You know, so it's you know, and I don't remember where I came up with that, but it was something that stuck with me. And I know what happened when there came a time as an adult where I was getting into business, and I had never taken a business class, and I needed to learn how, business strategy, and different things like that. So all of a sudden I found myself in my own personal educational system. And the fact that I was inspired to learn something was like, "Hey, I want to learn this." And then the fact that I knew how to learn something, I knew how to pick up a book, and without being, I guess, coddled or steered in any particular direction through the book, I could actually sit there and read it. Nobody was, now you do, you need to read chapter 1 and 2 today, or whatever. There was none of that. It was just all of a sudden I really, really needed to learn this stuff. And I had learned how to learn in school. So it was, for me, that was the easy transition. And all of a sudden I was like, man, I'm so glad that I had the education that I had. I can't remember 80% of the stuff that, I mean, the particulars, but I did learn how to learn
Well,
through.
that's really the whole point of the school system, is it's supposed to teach us how to learn. We have a bit of an outdated model here in the States, which is like, let's figure out how to get you to learn to hold a job in an industrial, age era, which
Yeah,
is, an outdated era, right?
yeah,
So we need to be updated to the information age and figure that out. But I like a lot of what you're saying is, effectively we're building the scaffolding for us to figure out how to, take that with us to each construction project of our lives.
right.
And everything that we need to learn, well, now we at least have a base set of tools and principles to fall upon. And what I love about what Peter's work has done for me is it's helped me to go back in time, right? Especially working with Ed Stracher as a healer too. I
Hmm.
do some really fun things and create, in my own hologram. I'll create a version of me, as a kid, and I'll find a time in which that kid didn't know how to learn, didn't know how to move forward. Right? It was met with something that was just so overwhelming that it just gave an error. An error code popped out, and so I went and rescued that kid from that error code,
Hmm.
and as myself, which then not only did it allow me and afford me the possibility to realize that I can be my own dad, but then it also gave me permission to be able to see both my mom and my dad as people. And because now I've rescued myself, I don't need somebody to come rescue me. Um, and it was incredibly empowering. It's super empowering. And to have that ability to not just in the moment, retrain myself, all right, well, I guess add to the tool set that I've got, but that I could go back in time and find that little boy, right, who's locked away, who didn't know how to move forward, and that one who's frozen in time, and to liberate him from his cell. Powerful, man, powerful stuff.
Well, it's interesting because EMF, the little boy that was being liberated was actually the old man. I
Mhm.
mean, when I came to EMF, I had serious imposter syndrome, and it, the things that I've accomplished in my life. I mean, I've done some amazing things, but for a couple of years, I found myself stuck. It's like when I thought about going back into film production, but the atmosphere wasn't as inviting as it was when I left. And it came to the point where I really want to work this hard to get into this. And it was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So moving into something else, coming from an industry that's highly dependent on your track record,
Mm.
I'm starting something new and I don't have a track record. But the only way I can get a track record is to get a job. But the only way I can get a job
Is
is to
that a
have
track
a track
record?
record. But the only, I mean, and I was going through that vicious circle. And the way it played out was I would try something and be rejected. And it's like, see, if I had a track record, that wouldn't have been an issue. So then I'd go back, try something else, and then go out and get rejected. And it's like, yeah, see, I need a track record. And I kept going through that. And EMF actually taught me that I am enough as I am.
Mm.
And I think one of the things that there was the module or the fact they were talking about it, they didn't really talk about it today, but they went over the part that actually broke me through, which was uh the guy that had the gym who left Malaysia or whatever to move to China, and he
Oh
opened
yeah.
a gym, and he
Tony,
wanted,
right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And he wanted to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And Peter's like, you moved to China to a place you don't even speak the language. You've opened a gym, you're running a business. You know, teach me how you did what you did,
Yep.
because that's what.
Clearly, you know something I don't. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I could, and as Peter was, suggesting, I don't know that I could do that. It's like, but this is something that you were able to do. And the other thing that he said was, it's he would rather work with somebody who cares about his success more than someone who knows a lot.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Right.
Because
Somebody who yes ends your idea. Okay, improvs, which is all
yeah,
about yes end. Hey, where does this go? Yeah, I love that.
yeah, or like it's like, no, this is how, and as someone who wants to help comes as a servant, it's like, if I don't know the answer to that, I know where I can find the answer. I have the resources that can find the answers for you, as opposed to, all right, yeah, I know that. Yeah, you just do this, because I've worked I've worked with a lot of people that knew everything until it came time for it to actually
Bro, I was one of
materialize.
them for so long, bro. I already know that. I already
Yeah,
know that. And I sat on
yeah,
my ass and didn't do anything. Then I didn't implement what I knew. And that's why it's so brilliant for Peter Sage to say that the war cry of failure is, I
I
already
already
know.
know that. But I do already know that.
Seeing, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Pun intended.
Yes, but
Well, what I love about what you said there too, also, is that this idea of a track record. Well, I myself am, producing a track record of just living my life and being me and authentically me. And I'm
mhm,
finding that the world is kind of forming around me to help augment me. And being able to lean on other people who do have a track record. For instance, a big part of my life leading up to, Peter Sage, little pre-pandemic, was I was just so full on, dead on, big on politics. And one of those guys, I literally would show up with the American flag in one hand, even though I was a big lefty. People always be like, a white guy with American flag. So they immediately mark me off as like some white supremacist, which is a little sad state of our nation, is that a white dude with a flag, immediately you see like a white supremacist. But I'd show up with a bullhorn too. And so it's like, well, I have really good ideas. Oh, you must not understand that my ideas are really good. Let me yell a little bit louder just so you can now appreciate how good my ideas are. And so that created a lot of problems, as I'm sure that you can understand and appreciate. And but it led me down this path that made my life a lot worse, incredibly worse in the moment. I was I was working magic, man, manifesting all sorts of things. You know, I was volunteering for Bernie Sanders. There was a phone banking group that maybe, 4 or 5 people would show up to. Yeah, I made calls to a bunch of volunteers and got them on fire. And then 2 days after making calls, well, that phone banking group turned into 25, and that, which got the attention of the national Bernie campaign, and they showed up, and very interesting. um and but it still, the magic was for others, not for me. And what Peter Sage has really allowed me to do is look back with a fine-tooth comb and not judge myself for who I was then. And now I'm able to, I went to a pitch the producer event, and not only did I go to a pitch the producer event, but I picked up a client, a high paying client, who needed in need of healing. And so that was a benefit. But then also the producer's like, hey, I think there's actually a lot of promise here. And so we're in talks to see about how to work out, and this would be, multi-month, maybe year, well, multi-month strategy to figure it out and get like the script written, the best format, and literally just starting. And but now I can perhaps take the lessons that I've learned, right? The idea that if you hate the rich, well, you're effectively now creating a vow, and and putting your hand to your heart and swearing an oath to poverty, right? Because are you going to become somebody who you hate, right? That idea that the most powerful thing in the human condition is the idea to become in equilibrium with the way that we see ourselves and view ourselves. Do I want to look in the mirror and be like, I freaking hate you? Well, no, man. Nobody's going to do that. Like, they might find themselves in that position and it's rock bottom, most likely. But we're not going to willingly do that. So if we hate the rich, well, then we are destined for poverty. There's really no direction. I mean, it's a self-fulfilled prophecy. And if instead we say, I don't necessarily agree with those who are rich and wealthy are doing, well, what if I became rich and wealthy? And just tuning into people who have broader sense of perspective, right? Something I couldn't do before. Patrick Bet David, he brought up this idea that some of these people who are on the far left political spectrum of here in the US, well, they're very easily corrupted because they've never had money. They've never known what it was like to have money. They've never appreciated what it was like to have money. And here comes somebody to say, hey, I can make your life a whole lot easier. And they're like, oh my God, I know, like, say AOC, for instance. I gave her, given her a decent amount of grief, but the poor lady wore freaking holes through her shoes, man. Holes through her shoes. And then somebody's like, yeah, I want to make your life a lot easier. Well, it makes sense that she'd go through the easier life. Whether I agree with that or not, it's a different discussion. But what if I were the person that could then offer myself an easier life, the same way I can be my own dad, right? Well, I think that's where the magic is. And so we'll see where this idea goes. And I'm really excited. And I suspect it's going to be pretty awesome.
So what when I don't have a problem with wealth or richness. I think the enemy is greed.
Yep.
It's
Because you can be greedy and poor as well.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, however you slice, whatever, in whatever area that you want to put it, you can be greedy with your love. You can be greedy with anything. I mean, any time that you withhold something or something from others and just mine, you can't have mine.
Like Smeagol. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The my precious. The moment you have something that's my precious that you can't let go of, that to me is the problem. Whether you put it financially, which I think right now there's way too much money in politics to where the people are the ones that are left out for the
Yeah.
most part. And I think and because of greed, a lot of times the people are left out. I mean, companies making billions and billions of dollars and raising the prices on stuff, at a time when everybody's struggling, is kind of greedy. I mean, it those are the problems that I have with any aspect of wealth, or again, or whatever it is. It's greed that's the problem. And then the one question I had for you is, so, and not that you have to get really specific, but I mean, so what are you working on with the producer? Is it a movie? Is it a show? Or what?
So the thing is like, what the hell do I know, right? I mean, and so they asked me where I could see the series going, and I'm really going to leave it a lot into the hands of the producer to kind of really help me shape this. But where my mind was at was maybe like a docu-series, possibly a
Okay.
documentary. And it doesn't necessarily even need to be my life. Like, certainly my life is going to inform it. It's going to be about my life, but I want to be able to allow it to have the liberty to be its own thing too,
Yeah.
because it's a lesson, right? It's not Josh Cameron, right? Because it's not about me. It's about the lesson that can help others.
Yeah.
And if it's bringing value, because one, it's pleasant to watch, if it's bringing value because it can actually inform and help people, well, then I already know that wealth is just the consequence of bringing value to the world.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that I'm looking at it. And rather than hubristically or egoistically being like, this got to be about me, right? Damn it, it's about Joshua, right? It's the Joshua show. So Voyage Media, they've got they work with some pretty great producers, and I was really struck by the attention that he gave me. We went over our time.
Mhm.
He asked me so many questions. It was obvious he was interested. And the thing is I didn't, I mean, again, like, what the hell do I know? It's not every day I'm just pitching a producer. I had to pay money to do it too. And the thing is, the producer is not going to want to waste his time,
Right.
right? Because they're not like the money that they're getting from me. Things like $5,000, like that's not something that they're going to win on. And then it might be another $2,000 to build a pitch deck, to actually pitch a studio to help, but like, that's not making anybody rich. And
Right.
so I'm in it for people who are in it for the long run, who are in it for, hey, this is an idea that we could really see taking fire, and that somebody would actually really love to be a part of, a studio would love to be a part of. The part of me that is still very much tied to the idea of helping in a political way sees that it's early enough that it could potentially be produced and starting to perhaps even affect the 2024 zeitgeist or Overton window, maybe. Uh,
Mhm.
and I try not to dwell too much on that, because then it's just really like, oh wow, look how special I am. And then it will be much harder for it not to be, hey, look at the Joshua show. And I'm really trying to look at it more as, hey, this is the journey. Look at the journey of I'm becoming. And I wouldn't have been here had I not met Peter Sage. I wouldn't be here had I not had the trust in myself that when I was like, hey, this guy, the stuff that he's spitting, yeah, it's for me. And if I couldn't trust that feeling, I wouldn't be here. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. Who knows where it will go? And I am hoping, right now, really, that it's just kind of what we had, what you mentioned before about just that beer conversation. And it was just something that in the moment there was something special. You invited somebody special to you, right? As a combat veteran, right? The people of America are very special to me in a very, obviously in a nebulous sense. In some ways a very personal sense. And uh and I hope to, granted the studios are going to have their own, field day with and do whatever they want with it in a certain respect, and I'll have my input, but I'm hoping it shapes up into an invitation, right? Because then when it's an invitation, I think it's a lot more powerful. And that invitation's like, it's obviously going to be leading in a certain direction. Same way that Peter invited us to be led to a certain direction. But yeah, I'm hoping it's that same style of invitation that just allows people to be like, oh, there's a lot better way. I don't need to just gnash my teeth at the system and break those same teeth, on the rocks of the wall that are shoved in my face. But I can take a step back, and instead of gnashing my teeth, like, hey, there's a wall right there. Who do I know that could help me maybe circumvent the wall, scale the wall? Does the wall even need to be there? Could we maybe figure out a way for that wall just to go away? And yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see where it goes.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, well, and none of this would be possible without not just Peter, but peer group, man. People like you,
Yeah.
Hearing my wild-eyed, every morning, first one there. Yeah, oh, there's Josh, first one talking again.
I remember I forgot who beat you. There were two people that
A
beat
couple
you.
times. I think
Yeah.
Alicia beat me once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Good
But
times, huh? Good times.
yeah, but something that you just said is something, the invitation, and I think about the analogy of Terry and I raising kids. Terry was the puller, come over here. It's beautiful over here. Don't you want to come here and enjoy this? And I was the pusher.
Yeah.
Get out there. Go. You're going to enjoy it. Get out there. So to become Terry is to be inviting.
Yeah. Well, the ocean invites every river
Yeah.
to swell it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the power is in the ocean.
Yeah. So it's like, now I need to leave my river and enter the ocean and call the current towards me.
Right. As a man, right? That's feminine energy right there, man.
Yeah.
So it puts us on a bit of a spiritual path of like, okay, well, where does the feminine live in my life? How do I hold my own feminine energy?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's a good place to explore because we are in a time, coming back to politics, we're in a time where the idea of masculinity, is also sneered at and gnashing of teeth. And because there's just so easy to just low hanging fruit of like, look at this one example of a toxic masculine person, therefore everything's bad, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And so being I can't escape from the fact I'm a dude, right? It's kind of born that way.
Yeah.
And so what can I do with who I am to show up as the main star in my own movie, where the movie that I want to star in is one that helps others, right? Benefit. Because at the end of the day, if I'm adding value and that value is then coming back to monetary implications for me in my life and the life of my family, well then if I add value and then it adds so much value that others can start adding value, well, if I'm at the grandfather, right, the top of that pyramid, so to speak, of the value of all that value that they are now branching off of, well, now they're sending love to me, and everyone, and so the seeds, and the fruit of my efforts are going out and helping others, and that's more value coming my way simply because I just want to help out, and the ocean just wants to help out. It just wants to receive and help out how to balance, the water that's coming in, and not try to judge it, not try to moralize it. This has been, the Tao Te Ching has been phenomenal, and it's been, nearly as orchestral in guiding my thoughts as EMF. And it's really helped me find that feminine, right? Because I don't know of any other, ancient, text or way of belief. Not that I'm necessarily a Taoist, though I fancy it a lot. I don't know of any other way of belief that is as feminine as the Tao, which just
Mhm.
allows things to happen, which waits for the moment, the right moment to act. Right, that's not very masculine. Right,
No.
that's inviting something into our space, and then we act when it's right. Um, and so, yeah, man, but I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be so open to Tao without Peter. And so I find, just like the ocean, I've got a lot of different channels now that are feeding into me. And I'm currently going through the 5-day challenge with Peter. And man, I'm finding a whole new sense of invigoration. Had a call with a cute girl who gave me her number, right? EMF, and was like, hey, we should talk. We should, and then we played with the ideas of just like what we were learning in the in the 5-day challenge, and just how, coming from a higher level dimension, Peter's not necessarily saying anything new, not really. And we're getting 5 sequential days of Peter, so getting his energy every single day. Well, maybe that's a little new, right? But we're hearing it from different vantage point, because we're now different people. And
Hmm.
since we're showing up as different people, well, now we can accept it in different ways.
Is this mindset challenge?
Yeah, it's the mastering manifestation 5-day
Oh,
challenge.
okay, yeah. I thought I was on the USM list. That's why I say I, anyway, I didn't do it, but I'll have to take them up next time. But
Yeah, he'll probably do it again. Like, this was the second one. I missed the first one. So and yeah, man, I'm really stoked the way that this life is shaping out. And really, dude, I love the way that this conversation has gone to, and the way that, just like a river, it winds. We
yeah,
find a lot of gems just by sharing our ideas, seeing where it goes. I mean, look how often you and I, who don't look the same, who come from different parts of the world, or at least different parts of the US. You're in
yeah.
Hawaii, I'm here in Utah. Um, and
Actually, I'm in the Bay Area.
oh, are you in the Bay Area now?
Yeah, I'm back home. I'm
Okay.
going back to Hawaii in May.
Okay. Nice, man.
Yeah,
Nice.
back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah. Well, I'll certainly envy you, right? Maybe I'll try it. I was there in May of last year in Maui area. Um, And so, but yeah, but look how similar our paths are, right? Because our souls are effectively of the same source, and we're just navigating the human game. Um, but any final thoughts, man? Any final kernels of wisdom from that big old blessed Bess brain?
Um, gosh, I only thing that I can think of is kind of what you just touched on, is the journey. It's like we're all here it is. We're all made of the same thing. We all come from the same place. From amoeba to where we are now, the system that's running within us, as in one food source, two amoeba are going to fight over that food source. All the cells within us, one food source, and they work together. That's why we're able to function. Somewhere along the way, someone, and I blame it on greed, just because I like doing that, turned turned us back into amoeba.
Oh, yeah, because in any sort of complex system, we need to have cooperation.
Yeah,
And greed, you can't cooperate if you're greedy.
no. And then also, go back to the industrial age education, where you aren't encouraged to cooperate. They call that cheating.
Yep.
So it's like we've learned to be separate. I mean, we were basically taught to be separate. And if
Mhm.
you got an answer wrong, you have to go sit in the corner with the dunce cap,
The
or
dunce house.
it's like it was like or if you were the class clown, you know,
Yeah.
you were ridiculed for being your authentic self. It was That's not what the worker needs to be. The worker needs to do this and follow this, be able to do this as a root. No collaboration, because that's that could lead to union or coming to an agreement that you need to be treated differently, and we don't want we need to squash that.
Speaking of Starbucks, right? Yeah, some union busting going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Howard
So
Howard Schultz got in trouble there. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah. So I mean, I think that people need to start looking at the ways that we're being turned into amoeba,
Mm,
and a lot of it, is by what people are saying about things, and people are believing it without looking into it for themselves. And the term, I've done my research, is something that seems to be carried on from somebody else's research. It's like, well, I've done my research and this is what I found.
yeah, O told me. I did my research, man.
Yeah, I did my research. And so I'll leave you with this, because I'm almost at the end of the book right now,
Oh,
and that's the 1619 project.
okay.
I got the book a while ago, and I read a little bit of it, but didn't. It was like started focusing like EMF and other things that were more immediate to me. Um, Bill Maher said, he was in a conversation with Bryan Cranston, and he was talking about the 1619 project that teaches white people are evil. They can never, you know, they can never be forgiven. Da, da, da. So I decided to listen. I audiobook, so I decided to listen to the book to try to find out where in that book it actually says that. And nowhere in that book, and I've got an hour left of the book to listen to, that the book says that. And I think it's more that if people actually listened or read the book, they would understand why we are, all of us, being treated the way we are. Reading that book and looking at where we are today, and taking it from a real, you know, open-mindedly skeptical, and just listen to what it's saying. I'm sure a lot of people would say, yeah, that's right, we are like that, we are being treated like that. Just saying. I'll leave it with that, because that, to me, in the last month or so, that was the one thing that slapped me in the face. And it's like, okay, I'm going to listen to it just because he said that.
Mm.
Just I want to see where somebody would write, you have to hate white people. And the book teaches you to hate white people. I went in looking for that. It's
So
not.
I've never read it nor listened to it, so I can't really speak to that. But I love that what happened was you heard something and you were inspired to investigate yourself. Like, okay,
Yeah,
well, I don't
I
really
did my
see.
research.
Yeah, I did my
I really
research,
did.
bro. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
really did my research.
Way to bring that around. Yeah, I love that. Well, and Bill Maher, right? The guy's a comedian. Does some, I love the space that he held for Woody Harrelson.
Hmm.
That was really interesting. Did you see, and real quick before we go, you see Woody Harrelson and his monologue for SNL, and how immediately, like the very next day, all the people who were greedy showed their hands. So Woody Harrelson was on SNL, and he's basically, talking about how, loves to smoke weed and stuff, and said that he went and, got a movie script from his producer. And so he went and he's sparking up a doob, leaning up against a tree, and he's reading the script. And the script is all about, and tell me if this sounds familiar at all. It's all about the biggest drug cartels in the world come together, and they tell you that you can't leave your you can't leave your house unless you take their drugs. And you have to keep taking their drugs or else you're not allowed out of the house. And he's like,
Hmm.
man, nobody would ever believe this. And he threw the script away. That's basically what he said. And then all these greedy fools start coming out. Woody Harrelson is so anti-vax. It's like, he didn't even mention vaccine at all. He
Yeah.
mentioned what a preposterous idea that
Yeah.
we were infected with. And it's so preposterous that on paper it looks ridiculous. But again, it comes back to what fiction writers have known all along, that fact is so much stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
And so if fact is already going to be stranger than fiction, well, then let's write our own facts and let's do our own. Let's change. Let's change the world in a way that's better by inviting people to have those conversations. Like, hey, does that person look happy? Well, what could you do to maybe make sure that you don't necessarily wind up not as driving beer, because maybe you'll be happy driving beer, but what could you do to where you don't have that look on your face?
So this is perfect. We bring this conversation complete, full circle. Module 1,
Yep.
ruling your reality.
Yep.
And that's what we all need to do.
Yep. 100%. Well, dude, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your time, especially after just hopping on a community call. And dude, you're awesome. I suspect that your students, your community are in great hands, and I bet you'd be a lot of fun to have as a community manager.
Yeah, maybe I'll smoke a doob and then
You and me both, bud. You and me both. We'll check in. We'll FaceTime. We'll
oh
FaceTime.
man.
Well, I'll sit in the park.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate that. And sir, thank you for joining us on What Saith the Crooked Nose. And yep, this has been wonderful. So if you guys, if you liked it, comment, if we lost you anywhere, comment, like, share, and subscribe. And give us some feedback so then we can see, what it was that you liked. And, again, maybe if we lost you anywhere, we can expound.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Josh.
My
And
pleasure.
your crooked nose.